Regulators at the US Agency for International Development say the organisation can no longer track billions of dollars in unspent humanitarian aid. It says President Trump's rapid dismantling of USAID means it can no longer ensure that $8.2 billion in funds will not fall into the hands of extremist groups or go astray in unstable regions or conflict zones around the world. Hundreds of USAID programs covering billions of dollars of assistance came to an abrupt halt after Trump ordered a freeze on most foreign aid. His administration has been moving to dismantle the agency and possibly merge it into the State Department. Now, that has left not only billions of dollars of funds in limbo, but also hundreds of workers. Around 500 have already been put on administrative leave. Thousands more were due to join them. But then a federal judge ordered a temporary pause in the plans. On Monday, former and current staff gathered outside the USAID headquarters to protest.
I'm here because I believe in the work of USAID. I spent years in the field. I spent time in Washington on projects related to keeping people from starving.
We work not by forcing people to have respect for America or by telling people to have certain values, but by supporting them in the ways that they feel that they need, and in doing so, making the world a better place for all of us.
Those stop work orders have prevented me from providing services around the world that help keep America safer and stronger.
Of course, it affected me personally. I'm on indefinite furlough, which is just a polite way to say that I no longer have a job. And so for myself and my family, it's very impactful.
And I'm joined now by Enrique Roig. He served as Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labour at the U.S. State Department. Previously, he was the coordinator for the Central America Regional Security Initiative at USAID. Welcome to DW. Thanks so much for your time. Thousands of USAID workers are worrying about their jobs, the future of their work. As we just said, you used to be at USAID. What are you hearing from people there?
Yeah, Anya, thank you for the invitation. And people are in limbo at the moment. There is a temporary restraining order for USAID direct hires. And so they're in a bit of limbo, waiting until February 14th to see what's going to happen. But there have been orders sent out to missions all over the world asking that USAID staff have 30 days to pack up and come home. So as you can imagine, that's created a lot of uncertainty and anxiety for these American staff overseas who need now to figure out what they're going to do in terms of their housing, coming back to the U.S., getting kids out of school, and just figuring out what their next moves are going to be if they do end up having come back to the U.S. At the same time, we've been hearing that orders are going out to cancel contracts and grants in the billions of dollars, and there really isn't the staff at USAID to actually process all of those requests, so it's unclear what's going to happen on that front. And the payment system that's required to actually issue and pay invoices from all these organizations apparently is not functioning at the moment. So it really is also leaving in limbo lots of international organizations who provide life-saving humanitarian assistance all over the world in countries like Sudan and Eastern Congo and Gaza. And so unclear at the moment how things are going to move forward, but the USAID really has been decapitated, to put it mildly.
Enrique, Trump and his team have produced a list of diversity, equity and inclusion initiatives that they say is proof of waste and abuse. We're going to take a quick listen to the White House press secretary, and then we'll get your reaction afterwards.
These are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government. Thank you, guys.
That kind of talk has obviously led to a lot of discussion about what USAID does and doesn't do. Can you help us separate the fact from the fiction?
Sure. I mean, a lot of these have been already debunked by the media and by the press. I would call it, manufactured rage here by the White House and this administration. A lot of these programs are being taken out of context. There's a lot of cherry picking that's happening here with regards to these initiatives. Oftentimes you'll look at a program where they'll say we're funding something, trans opera, and then you actually look at the program and it's working with vulnerable populations in Colombia who are at the most risk of having their human rights abused. And so, it might be an arts or cultural activity that may be done in that context as part of a larger program. But of course, they pull that out. They make it seem something, insidious and something that, we shouldn't be funding. At the same time, I would make the argument, though, that, we know that the LGBT community all over the world is often the most vulnerable and victimized. And of course, we want to make it sure that their human rights are respected as well. And so, we shouldn't shy away from supporting those kinds of activities. On the DEI front, I'll mention here as well that a lot of times these programs can include things like improving accessibility for individuals who have disabilities so they can enter, for example, a public space. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Or it can also involve supporting women candidates to participate in an election. So these, again, are part of activities that have been funded for decades and have received bipartisan support for many years. So I do find it a little bit rich now that the White House is coming out and making such a big deal about it, but I think we understand why that's happening given the current political context.
So just to be clear, you reject any claim that the agency needs an overhaul?
I don't reject the claims that it needs an overhaul. I think many of us on both sides of the political aisle would say that foreign assistance definitely could benefit from reform, but this is not the way to do it, right? I mean, it's Congress that has the mandate as the appropriator to actually lead a process and a discussion around how best reform foreign assistance, and that's not what's happening here. When you start off with the premise, like Elon Musk has, that USAID is a criminal organization, it's being led by Marxists and radical lunatics, that's not actually a reform process. And when you add on top of that the putting staff on administrative leave and firing contractors and basically leaving implementing partners holding the bag, and many of our local partners overseas in a precarious situation, again, that's not reform. Mm-hmm. And so if we really want to have an honest discussion about foreign assistance, let's do that, but let's do it in a way that actually respects our Constitution and our democratic norms, and let's sit down and have that discussion.
Mm-hmm. President Trump says he plans to integrate USAID into the State Department under Marco Rubio. We're going to take a listen to the Secretary of State here.
There are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy. The attitude that USAID has adopted over the years is, no, we are independent of the national interest. We fund programs irrespective of whether it's aligned or not aligned with the foreign policy. That's ridiculous.
So Rubio saying he wants to fund programs that align with American foreign policy. What do you think that could mean in practice?
Let me just say here that U.S. development programs have always been aligned with U.S. foreign policy. This is nothing new. And so I find it also a bit ironic that the Secretary of State is saying this at this point. He's been one of the biggest advocates for U.S. foreign assistance during his time as a U.S. Senator. And so I think, again, what we're seeing now is obviously there is more here, more to it in terms of a political agenda to fund only certain things that they feel are aligned with their specific mandate and vision for America. But all of the things that we have funded have always been in support of our national and economic security interests. I've worked on programs, for example, in the Western Hemisphere in places like Colombia, where we're providing support to 2.5 million Venezuelans who are being integrated into that country so they don't make their way to our southern border. And similarly, we have funded activities in Haiti, providing humanitarian assistance, community violence prevention, programming support, economic development assistance, again, to mitigate migration of Haitians to our southern border, and the same in Central America as part of the root causes strategy. So again, all of these activities have been in support of our national and economic security interest. And so I think for the Secretary to say that he wants to take this into the State Department, I would say it's going to be a bit of a challenge. The capacity and capability does not currently exist there. And especially if you want to downsize USAID from 10,000 employees to less than 300, I don't see how they're going to be able to actually implement a robust foreign policy with development assistance.
You touched on it earlier. Billions of dollars of aid has already been stopped. Can you tell us what kind of impact this is having?
Well, it's having a huge impact. I mean, for example, USAID buys $2 billion worth of commodities from farmers all across the Midwest. Those commodities now, about 350 million of them, are sitting in a port in Houston, rotting away instead of making their way to places like Sudan and the Eastern Congo and Gaza, where they are needed to provide life-saving assistance to displaced populations. We have pharmaceutical companies here in the U.S. who are also unable to deliver life-saving medicines at the moment, given the stoppages in payments and the stop work orders. We have economic development assistance that's not being delivered at this moment. We have local implementing partners all across the world who are laying off staff as we speak and have been for the last couple of weeks. And so they are being decimated. So anybody who thinks that we can turn on the light switch back again and restart foreign assistance is delusional. I have to just put it that way, because what we're doing now to the whole development industry is really quite dramatic and catastrophic.
Mm-hmm. You've made it very clear how this is impacting people abroad. How will this impact people at home in the US?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, with the farmers across the Midwest who now are going to, be cut off from selling their products to USAID, who uses it for humanitarian and food assistance overseas, right? We have pharmaceutical companies who sell medicines to USAID also for their humanitarian support overseas. We have universities, research institutions who are also partners of USAID here in the US. We have the nonprofit sector who, large organizations like World Vision, Save the Children, Catholic Relief Services, and others who work with USAID hand in hand to support vulnerable communities all over the world. All of these organizations are having to let off staff. We'll see how many of them survive after this is all done, but I'm not super optimistic that we're going to have a very robust development sector left after this. And again, the impact is going to have on other industries, small businesses, veteran-owned businesses who are also partners of USAID. So again, it's going to have a drastic effect across the board.
Enrique Roig, former State Department official and USAID coordinator. Thank you so much, Enrique, for your time.
Thank you, Anya. It's a pleasure.